Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brain Club. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. We're really glad that you're here. Let me share screen and get us oriented to our conversation. So tonight we'll be discussing masking and the impact on relationships, health, everything. If that term is new to you, masking or camouflaging is when autistic and ADHD people suppress, hide parts of themselves in order to appear more socially acceptable. What's important about masking is that this is largely an automatic and involuntary process. This is not something that we pick to do or do on purpose. This is something the nervous system learns to do in response to environments that have signaled repeatedly that who you are is not safe to show up as. Before we get going, closed captions are enabled. You just have to turn them on if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. That is an out of order slide. I have no idea how that happened. All right, there we go. That's the slide we want. If you're new to Brain Club or new to All Brains Belong, welcome. And everyone else, welcome back. We are a nonprofit organization supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains. And we do this in lots of different ways. And you are invited to be part of what we're doing here at Brain Club. Sierra, would you be able to take? Oh, you are. Okay, great. Thank you, Sierra, for letting everyone in from the waiting room. Everyone is welcome here at Brain Club. Brain Club is for neurodivergent people, people who support neurodivergent people who are exploring their neuroidentity, and anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. There are multiple right ways to participate here. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk around or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks or anything else that needs doing. During our panel discussion, which is a previously recorded panel, so it'll be a video that we're watching for our panel. During that time, you can use the chat while you're listening or emoticons. We may not have time for discussion. This video is going to run a little bit long because it's so powerful, and I didn't have I couldn't possibly cut anything that any of our panelists said. So our panel is going to run 45 minutes itself. So I think our Brain Club will run about 10 minutes over. You can use the chat while you're watching. You don't have to. Observation is a valid form of participation. Brain Club has an intentionally created culture. And so if you're new here, here are some of the things that you'll notice. So first off, this is for education purposes only. You may hear panelists refer to aspects of their health, but this is not for medical or mental health advice. It's also not a support group or the right place for the audience to be discussing their own trauma. We're going to keep the focus on our panelists, and we also keep the focus on moving forward. This is a place where we hope that you'll leave with a better understanding of some neurodivergent experiences, at least the neurodivergent experiences of our presenters. And for many, this is a way to feel less alone. If it's your first time at Brain Club, keep coming back. It might take a couple times to kind of figure out the culture, figure out the space and how we facilitate it. We recommend observing the first time or two. Sierra's put some frequently asked questions in the chat. So here at Brain Club, our idea is that we're here to demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture for purposes of shifting broader community awareness of some of the topics of concern and importance to our community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world, and the idea that then you take it forth into the rest of your life, and that is how culture change happens. Thank you to everyone who supports Brain Club and makes it possible for us to be here week after week, providing this educational content. Before we get going with our panel, a couple of announcements. First off, if you have not seen it yet, Brain Club is now a podcast. New episodes are released the second and fourth Fridays of the month, and we'd love for you to check it out. Also, to let you all know, at the end of this month, we will be doing our next round of friend matching, our free program Kid and Teen Connections for ages 4 to 17, where we find and make customized friend matches for kids and teens based on shared interests. So we'd love for you to check it out if you have a kid and teen in your life to spread the word. And last announcement, our fifth annual Shifting the Autism Narrative, the Impact of Stigma on Health. This is a webinar that I give every year during Autism Awareness Month. Groaning internally. This is a webinar about the role of the healthcare system in perpetuating stigma of the autism narrative and what we can do instead. Okay, so here we go. New month, new theme. Every month we have a new theme where we unpack aspects of that theme across several weeks. So the cost of masking is our theme. I don't know what happened to these slides being out of order, but what's going to happen is that I'm going to give you a little bit of background content, and then we're going to watch our panel. So what is camouflaging or masking? As I said before, this is when people hide or suppress parts of who they are to fit in, to stay safe, or to avoid judgment. It is subconscious, not intentional. It is a survival strategy. So some examples of this: forcing eye contact, scripting conversations in your head beforehand, suppressing stimming, laughing at the right moments, even though you maybe feel confused or uncomfortable and don't quite get the joke, holding yourself together in public and then falling apart later. Masking at its core is a survival strategy. It's the ongoing, often subconscious work of appearing competent, likable, non-broken, and it takes a toll. It has lots of layers that even when we know that it's a thing and that we're doing it, it's many layers that we peel back over time, and you'll hear our panelists' experience with that. And it looks different for everyone. Something else worth sitting with, I think is important to name, is that masking also isn't accessible to everyone. Some people never had access to masking. Some people lose that ability, particularly in the context of neurodivergent burnout. So just take a moment to feel that, especially as you're listening to these stories, and kind of imagine what it might be like to move through the world where most spaces aren't safe to show up in, and to not even have this survival strategy as a tool. One more thing that I'll mention is that, just to be clear about, is that unmasking, like not doing this, that's not a goal or a destination that we're advocating for, because this is an involuntary survival strategy. What we actually want is to be in environments where we don't have to mask. That's the goal. We want to be in environments that are safe, with people who are safe, where our nervous system sense that it's safe to show up authentically. That's the goal. Authentically, comfortably, without judgment, without shame, or worse. So that's what we're talking about, and we want to be careful tonight, not to only center experiences that feel out of reach for a lot of people in this room. So sometimes popular neurodivergent content, content about autism or ADHD, etc., does that. Sometimes like centers only one version of narratives, and that can bring up a lot of frustration or even resentment. And if that happens, that's not a character flaw. That's just what happens when representation is uneven. So tonight we're trying to hold more of that variation honestly. And so thank you to our panelists, Beck Natal, Janelle Starr, Anil Kailani, and Liz Carney. And with that, we will watch our panel. Oh, I had one more slide. Sorry. We like to show this before all of our community panels, just as part of protecting Brain Club culture. We really strive to center the panelists because these folks are making themselves vulnerable. So while we watch, we treat the chat as the equivalent to mouth words, what we would say out loud while someone else is talking. So just as an invitation, if you're going to use the chat, to use so intentionally and thoughtfully. And we welcome chat comments that keep the focus on the panelists, most of whom are here tonight. So thank you again to our panelists. Obviously, we're all on journeys. We're on journeys together, figuring all the things. I wonder, like, do you remember when you first recognized that you were, in fact, putting a version of yourself out into the world that was different from the version inside?
It was a lot of like tiny revelations of, oh, in that moment, I was using masking to get through it better.
Yeah, I think I first learned that I was masking a few years ago when I was kind of in the midst of college and also kind of at the worst of like the lockdowns due to COVID. Um, I learned that I have ADHD and autism kind of around the same time that I realized I was trans. So during the period of time when I was in college, isolated in my room by myself, kind of alone with my thoughts. Um, I did a lot. It was not the easiest time, but I did end up doing a lot of self-reflection during that time, and realized that I felt uncomfortable with myself just as a baseline, and that there was like something wrong at the core of who I was and who I was presenting to the world.
Masking for me is kind of like a survivalist tool. It's not something that feels good, but it's something that I do to survive just showing up for life. And that means that, you know, I am capable of doing very difficult things for short periods of time because the masking allows me to enter into conversations that are difficult or emotional or uncomfortable or go into social situations that, again, are uncomfortable. But I'm able to do it because I can sort of dilute dilute myself to be palatable for whatever situation I'm in.
In a way, we all do it. And most people automatically assume that it is really just with neurodivergence and autism and etc. But it is definitely something that everybody does.
So yes, we all do this to some extent when the environment compels us to mask. When did you first discover that this was happening for you?
Probably middle school, high school. I didn't really have an idea of what it was at the time, no vocabulary or anything like that. I had just noticed this consistent feeling of just performing for others, and it was more attributed to at the time being an undiagnosed of everything, undiagnosed ADHD, undiagnosed autism, undiagnosed depression, anxiety, like the whole all of the things. Basically, the only thing holding me together was this idea of the performance because I felt so isolated with all the stuff that I was dealing with. So it felt more normal to be in that performative space than not.
There was a deep sense of disconnection between the person I was presenting to the world and the person that I truly was. Um, and especially the process of going to college and really thinking about how am I presenting myself to these people that I'm meeting for the first time in my life, gave me a lot of things to think about. And that's when I started really digging into neurodiversity and also being genderqueer, thinking about my own gender identity and how I wanted to be perceived in that way as well.
That is so much to happen in the middle of lockdown.
Yes. Yeah.
Distinguishing between what is the impression I manage to accomplish a strategic purpose versus what am I hiding because I am deep down broken and defective. Like, how did you splice that?
Um, it felt a little bit like lying at the beginning, because I was doing a lot of experimentation with just how I present myself to other people, and I was fortunate enough to be in a group of friends that was very accepting of my exploring my gender specifically. And, some of them were trans, and I just tried out different pronouns with them and like sat in that and like learned how it felt. Um, and I realized that like the default of how I was presenting myself to the world didn't have to be what I was doing all the time. And even if you make a change as to how you're presenting yourself, you can always just roll that back if you don't like it. Um, and I don't know, especially on Zoom, it's just like you can tell how other people are perceiving you.
When did I first realize I was masking? I would say probably a couple of years ago. I'm in my mid 30s now. Um, as a kid, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing was masking because it was viewed as this is the way we behave, this is the way we communicate, this is the way we conduct ourselves, this is how our executive functioning should work, even if it doesn't work that way for you. And so, after my kiddo was diagnosed as autistic, I, and at the time was nonverbal, I was like, why do I understand her so well? Why can I sort of read her mind? And I realized it was because there were a lot of things that I recognized in her, like sensory overwhelm, like feeling dysregulated, like not knowing how to navigate a situation that was causing these like just I could tell she was uncomfortable. I could tell something wasn't off, and I could intuitively know what she needed in that moment. That she needed like deep pressure, she needed a squeeze, she needed a quiet moment to step away, she needed a snack, like whatever it was, I could kind of tell that that's what she needed. And basically, I was just doing for her what I wish somebody had done for me.
And it wasn't until maybe after leaving the Navy, or heck, within even the last 5 to 7 years, whenever I finally had the better understanding of masking and really knowing, okay, I need to allow myself to stop and be able to rest. And it's been a work in progress.
It's interesting that you used the word rest, um, because I think a lot of people aren't aware of the drain, the energy drain, the resources drain of the performance.
It takes a lot more energy. It takes a lot more of a physical toll sometimes, because you get home and there is almost a need to not let go of the mask, because ultimately masking is really just, at least in my perspective, it's become a survival instinct for multiple different reasons. And whenever you don't understand what's going on, it's hard to drop that and allow yourself to actually be able to be yourself and rest. So you're constantly sitting in that.
Somewhere along the line, I realized that I had constructed my sense of humor as a mask. And so, and the function of it was, oh, if I say something that and you laugh, then you know I'm safe and I know you're safe. It was a real, that was so humbling to be like, oh, your entire sense of humor is predicated on making yourself safe in this moment and seeking out to understand, is this other person going to be safe with me? Whoa.
Yes, and like, of course, that is what you have done, right? Like, we all
Right.
need to
Yeah.
establish safety before we're able to engage. And you at some point figured out that this is a strategy that allows you to do that.
Yeah. And a quick one. Like, you know right away, like, oh, we got vibes or we do not have vibes.
Layers, like I keep peeling them like every day. It's like some other thing that I am, and for me, it's not like, I mean, I think that often there is a um like an intentional code switch if I'm trying to get someone who I don't have vibes with to understand a thing that I need to happen, either for my own benefit or the
Yes,
benefit of our
yes,
community, like that.
yes.
And then there's like the unintentional, like subconscious stuff that like I don't know why I don't feel safe with a person, but like I'm gonna
Yeah.
play my cards closer to the deck because or chest or whatever. Anyway, because it's like this is not safe. But even with people I am close with, there's still like layers. Like, and I think that, and like we've talked many times about this, about like core values and core anti-values. It's like
Mm.
sometimes the mask for me comes on because I'm prioritizing some of those values or avoidance of core anti-values. And
Mm.
what that makes me do is hide or suppress parts of myself
Yes.
that would conflict with those presentations. The shadow.
That is so true. And I think that's why masking feels so multi-layered and complex and difficult to understand. Like if we had been having this interview when I was like 8 years old, 15 years old, 23, I don't think I would have said masked.
I think there's a balance between teaching somebody um, kind of what we can do in certain situations while still honoring ourselves, right? While still like saying, this is what I need in this moment, and giving ourselves permission to have that in a way that's also considerate of like the people around us, right? Because if I showed up at work every day and flipped my lid because I didn't get enough sleep and I was hungry and whatever, I wouldn't be able to do my job. So there are times where I have to say, I have to use the restroom, and I just take a couple minutes, I splash some cold water on my face, or I step outside the door and get that blast of cold air. And I know that that's something that helps regulate my nervous system. I take some deep breathing, whatever I need to do. Like right now, I have a fidget in my hand. That wasn't something that I gave myself permission to have as an adult because I'm like, those are for children. But I'm realizing that like I'm allowed to have those things. Like I am just as worthy of having those things to cope with stress as my daughter is. Watching her go through school, watching her go through social situations, watching her go through all these different things and being sort of unapologetically herself. And I was kind of envious of that because I was like, I was still being plagued by that's not how we behave. That's not what we do. That's not what we say. Right. And so I was trying to constantly compensate for her. And then I was like, wait a second. Like, I love who she is. I love who she is. Is it difficult sometimes when other people don't accept us the way we are? Yes. Is it difficult because it's how society sees us as being like too much or dysfunctional or, not behaving appropriately or whatever it is? Yeah, that can be difficult in social situations, but I love who she is. I love that she says what comes to her mind. I love that she's not necessarily concerned about ruffling feathers about how she thinks and how she feels, and that there's literally almost like not a filter on it. And my biggest thing that I'm trying to do is preserve that in her.
Something that comes up often is like going to Walmart is like one of my least favorite things to do. Um, and in 2020 and 2021, especially, that's when a lot of stores were starting to do curbside pickup. And I still do that, both like obviously for COVID reasons and also just because it's so overstimulating to go into the store in person, um, and have to like interact with people. And I am masking the whole time I'm in there because I'm like, oh my God, I have to appear like a normal person in this grocery store. I went to Walmart and I picked up a few things. It took me probably a couple hours to get like the 10 or 15 things that were on my list, and I came home. Um, and I was trying to put things away, and my partner was there, and I was like trying to put like a box of pasta or something in the cabinet, and I couldn't figure out how to make it fit, and I just like broke down crying, and I was like, hmm, this is not a this is not the typical response to having to put away pasta. And I realized that was a product of like overstimulation and like the physical and mental effort of masking the whole time that I was there.
Because I think I've always sought to be myself in spaces, and yet the mask was always there. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that building the mask early on holds you back from really understanding yourself and asking yourself the questions that you need to in those very important like growth times.
You don't experience it as a mask because this is the way it's always been. But you
Right.
like you're a child, you're not like you don't have the metacognitive awareness to see
Yeah.
the ways in which your self-view is shaped by the people and the environment and all the things.
You're forming yourself into a need for masking, and so there's no awareness of that. Like yourself is being formed with the mask already there.
Yes, which is why I think that many people when they like learn about this concept and they're examining this concept, they're lost. Like they're
Yeah.
lost because they're like, if I'm not my mask, who am I? And like I think people don't even know what their true self is because we become our masks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been working on with people in terms of being able to figure out their masks or what their true selves are, identifying beliefs that have become their own because of masking or because of something else going on. And it's always interesting to see parallels and mirrors between everyone and the rationales of why. Like you said, the mask becomes us in our own because that's what we grow to know. And it's hard to drop that, especially whenever you don't know what's supposed to be underneath.
You're not really trying to have a relationship with anyone at Walmart. You're just trying to like get your food. And yet that is also taking a toll. So what about when in relationships? Like what is that toll like when you can't be yourself?
Yeah, I think something I struggle with the most is when I'm switching back and forth between having to mask and not having to mask. So like again, also during like my first couple years of college, that's when I met my partner, and they're also neurodivergent, they're also genderqueer, and they're fantastic. Um, and I don't feel like I have to mask with them, and I'm really grateful for that. But switching from feeling that security with them to then having to go out and have relationships in other parts of my life where it's not as safe to be authentically myself, it takes more effort because I have to switch back to that mode.
The process of unmasking for me has been really, really difficult because when you have that narrative in your head that you've always been too much, you've always been too sensitive, you've always been too dramatic, or I talk a lot when I'm nervous, or fill in the blank with whatever it is. Um, those thoughts are always there. It's really hard to undo 30 plus years of being told the same thing. And I think what allows me now to have a little more compassion for myself and to unmask more and more is having the love that I do for my kids and seeing that they're just doing the best with where they are at right now, with where their body is, with how they're feeling in their body, and like they're showing up to the best of their ability in this moment. And that moment, their best may look different today than it looked yesterday. Um, they may not have, like, I have to remember also that my tank today I may wake up and open my eyes and my tank is at 20% because I burned myself out the day before, not realizing that that's what I was doing. And so today, my distress tolerance, my ability to keep myself regulated, I might have to work twice as hard to do that in public. And when I come home, I might have a little less bandwidth to keep all that in.
So like when I first unmasked, I didn't have control over that. It happened. And that was so scary and so vulnerable. And I felt like I was walking around for a really long time, like a one raw nerve. And it was like I was either going to just go into a shell and never come out, or somebody was going to like make eye contact with me and I was going to like dump everything out on them. And that was maybe the hardest moment of understanding the masking was losing the control and not understanding how to gain it back right away. And I think what has happened is as I have explored it, it has become safer to sort of like meld back the person I am with kind of like what you said about, you will need to switch into, parts of a mask to accomplish things. And I think sort of like that has become easier for me to negotiate. And maybe that's true for you too.
Yeah, no, I think, and it also like depends on like where I am on my like burnout spectrum and like how
Oh,
much
yeah.
access I have to executive functioning. Like, because, for me, so much of masking is like an involuntary automatic safety mechanism, but there are, which is different from, and those things are like, I have to hide this part of myself because it would be unsafe
Yes.
to show this part of myself, different from I'm meeting with somebody later who I don't know and they are in some position of power, and so like I have prepared scripts and I'm gonna follow them. They're not exactly how I would show up with you, but there's something which just doesn't feel like masking. That feels like strategic
That's a
communication.
skill.
Yeah.
It's like a skill versus a need
A
or
survival.
or an autonomic response.
Yes, I think thinking about masking as an involuntary automatic, like autonomic nervous response, I think that's really powerful. The topic of like, I want to unmask, and you're like, dude, I don't think you can just like decide you're gonna unmask. I think if you are not with safe people in safe environments, like this is a survival. And anyway, like, how do you talk about that with people?
Acknowledging again, I am not a licensed professional in terms of psychology. I am a nurse, but I have a lot of experience with psychology and mental health. The biggest thing is finding that safe haven. That is basically the key, because if you don't have something like that where it's like a safe space to be able to unmask or the people around you, it is extremely difficult, and I would say probably almost impossible to allow yourself to really be yourself.
I try to be myself authentically as much as I can. And I'm really lucky that I'm in a place where I can do that around my partner. I am a patient at All Brains Belong, and I'm really grateful that I'm able to not feel like I have to mask in front of like my healthcare providers. That's a huge thing. And I don't feel like I have to put on a performance in order to get the care that I need. Knowing exactly what about myself is a result of masking and what is me being authentic and feeling safe and being able to express myself.
So your comment about I try to show up authentically when I can, like is I think really well said, because I think that some people who don't really understand masking don't really understand that this is an involuntary automatic response when we don't feel safe. And so like we could be aware of it, but we could very easily slip back into it because the cues from the environment are compelling us to hide parts of ourselves. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that shows up that I'm kind of constantly thinking about in terms of my work, because I work at an organization that is very inclusive and very accepting of whatever way you work best. You know, that's how you're welcome to show up. Um, but I find myself masking anyway because of every other experience in my life.
I'm going to try to be myself. And when I was looking for new jobs, one of the things that I talked about with my counseling coach was I want a job where I can show up to work every day and be myself, that I don't have to hide who I am from people, that like the qualities that make me a good contributor to society, a good support person, a good advocate, those traits that make me so passionate. I want those to be valued where I go, not something to dull down.
And you
And
deserve nothing less than that. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people, I don't know if this is the case for you, but a lot of people who say, I want to unmask, what some people mean by that is, I want the environments that I'm in to be safe to unmask, as
yeah,
opposed to something I'm doing differently. I want to, you know, be brave and show myself. It's like, no, dude, I want it to be safe because, like you started this conversation, masking is a survival strategy.
so I am either telling a complete stranger my life story, or I'm trying to not open my mouth and say anything because I know once that floodgates open, when the floodgates open, I will say whatever.
I deeply get
Um,
that. Yes.
And so I'm basically trying to find the middle, which is that there are some people that are safe for me to be myself around, but not everybody deserves the completely raw, unfiltered version of me.
Like, this is not about like a strategic decision to be like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
not be consumed with my safety anymore. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and so like I think a piece of it for me has been sort of having grace with myself and um and having and cultivating radical acceptance around how I'm going to show up in a given situation and just kind of knowing like I will get through this and I will learn from it and I will build on it.
Yeah, yeah. And when there are times where I am noticing myself showing up differently, because sometimes I notice it while it's happening. And if
Yeah.
I'm regulated enough, I can zoom out and like self-monitor and like tell myself the story you just said. Sometimes it's not till later, or sometimes it's not like I'll watch a Brain Club interview and I'll be like, I was not feeling safe in that interview. Like, who is that person? I
Oh,
don't recognize that.
wild. That is wild. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, because I think that like sometimes it's also the retrospective, like I felt terrible or I feel terrible. What happened today? Oh, I had an interaction with a bunch of
Yeah.
strangers, so I didn't know if I were safe or not. Like they're just sort of taking stock of that your autonomic nervous system state may be, or your resources, your bandwidth, like how much
Yes.
resource when you're spent, like it is quite possible that you are spending spoons on a whole bunch of stuff,
Mhm.
being upright, feeding yourself, all the things. But some of it you might be spending masking. What do you think about that?
For sure. For sure. That's probably a heavy spoons thing for me.
Yeah.
And I think I've been thinking about this lately because I see this in my kids is I think a response that I developed from an early age was I think at some point I realized what my bandwidth was from an early age. And when people like teachers wanted me to go beyond that bandwidth, it was bad. It wasn't stretching me academically. It was harming me and it was causing me to put the mask
I
on.
think that, for so many people, they think they're the only ones going through this process.
Exactly. And that is definitely the isolation of masking because again, it's a performance, so you're not really letting people in or seeing you. So there is going to be that isolation and kind of disconnecting from people because of, not wanting to get hurt. Self-awareness is definitely a major portion of it. It took me a long while to kind of really know who I was and kind of come into my own, to really start understanding and knowing, okay, this is kind of pushing the limit a little bit whenever it came to, the masks that I wear. Masks are a necessary evil, but that doesn't mean we have to become the masks we wear. For me, it was just getting to really know myself and then actively just listening, trusting instinct, trusting intuition.
Like a sensing process, like sensing you're taking in cues from your environment, from the people in your environment, cues at the level, like cues that the body is receiving in terms of like, what's my next move?
Exactly.
The consequences of me being myself with everybody and it not being a safe situation means that I'm opening myself up to consequences or scrutiny or judgment or what criticism. And like, I'll be honest, that does not roll off my back. I take it all very much to heart.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to rejection. Thank you, ADHD, for rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I really appreciate it. And so, when I do get rejected, it hurts, right? So like I have been trying to find people that feel safe.
That like now that you've had the experience of, safe, not safe, I actually know what a safe relationship feels like.
It is very much involuntary, in the same way that a trauma response is involuntary. I try to, I mean, I've been to years of therapy, so I'm familiar with a lot of strategies for interrogating your own thoughts and thinking about like, is this actually the reality or is this your brain telling you something that's not actually the case? So I do try to think about the way that I present myself and think about my behavior and notice when I am masking, and it's not something that I can really change in the moment, but at least thinking about it like afterwards and being able to acknowledge what caused me to feel the need to mask, and then thinking about how I might either do things differently if I need to, or just accept that, like, if I'm expected to give a presentation in front of a bunch of people, I'm going to be masking, and that's just how it is. Like, that's my survival strategy.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to narrate my access needs into those spaces. Because that's neutral, that's not threatening, and encourages other people to say what they need. And it's not raising any red flags to do that. It might at first because people aren't used to kind of conceiving of their needs that way. But I think people are getting more used to having those types of discussions.
Yeah, I love that. And I try to spend as little time as possible with people I can't do that with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is also
Yeah, I mean, I think insofar as the benefit was it protected me and it acted like a screen. It screened out unsafe people, right? We talked about that. I mean, I think what it cost me was mostly time, self-esteem, because I couldn't build a self-esteem if I couldn't build a true self, right? And so it blocked me from knowing what I wanted in my heart, knowing what moves to make. Like I was the kid who like did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still don't. I'm still looking for that one to answer that question. But I have a feeling that if the mask hadn't been there, that might have been a more overt thing for me, I might have been able to explore that more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's hard to like see the signs from the universe that point you in different directions when like there is not a connection with like an aligned, unified purpose. It's like you are this
Yeah.
hodgepodge of shaped forces from the external world.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's so poetic.
I would never be able to reproduce that, but yeah, yeah.
No need
Yeah.
to.
Like, what has it been like to know that you are not the only person in the universe on this journey? Like to be connecting with other people who get this, the things you're talking about.
I think there's something incredibly invaluable. Every person needs to feel a part of a community. That's like that it is essential to our existence. And when I first got an autism diagnosis, and it was ABB, honestly, that connected me to other people and going to appointments and going to group appointments, going to brain clubs, going to different community events online, and hearing other people talk about their experience and kind of a lot of what you were doing when I was talking, where you're like, yeah, me too. Like just having that validation that I am not the only person who feels this way, um, definitely keeps me from feeling alienated or from getting like a huge sense of imposter syndrome or like feeling like maybe I don't belong here. I hear things that people say all the time and I'm like, I have that exact feeling, but that's not something I've said out loud.
And when I started to come to Brain Club was kind of like the next place that I confronted it, and just kind of seeing and collecting people's experiences and stories and kind of immediately recognizing like, oh, that's me. Oh, that's a great way to put it. Oh, I've had that experience. And between kind of like people sharing and making connections in the chat and people that you've interviewed over the years, and that just really built up a real expanse of experiences that I could look at and see myself.
Joining All Brains Belong as a patient has changed my life and has changed how I see my own future. I was diagnosed with MECFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, shortly after becoming a patient at All Brains Belong. I didn't even really, I kind of knew it was a thing. I knew the term, but I didn't know. I never had pursued a diagnosis because everything I knew about it was just like, well, you're fatigued all the time. That sucks. The end. But now knowing that there are treatment strategies and ways that I can like actually pace myself and address my needs and acknowledge my limits um, in order to really make the most of my life and what my body can do and what my brain can do. That's really significant, being able to actually do something about what I've been struggling with. And on the topic of masking, like just learning more about what masking is, again, has really helped me put words to my experiences and has helped me um, learning more about masking has helped me recognize how much energy I'm spending on it and how much that's contributing to my fatigue and how much that's contributing to um, how much time I spend in crashes or in burnout. And the fact that that masking is kind of taking away the energy that I could be spending on, hobbies or things I enjoy or spending time with the people that I don't have to be masking around. Um, and I really appreciate everything that All Brains Belong has done, and continues to do for me and for everybody in this community. I feel like not only am I respected, but I'm also gently challenged when I slip back into those patterns of um, pushing myself kind of to the point of destruction.
And I think that's why it's really important that we say the quiet part out loud sometimes, because we don't know who could be listening, who could feel validated in their perception of how things are for them and have the courage, then it's kind of like a trickle effect, right? Like the more I talk about what it's like in my experience, that someone else might relate, um, gives them the courage to say something about it. Hey, does anybody else feel this way when this happens? And then another person might go, oh my gosh, I totally feel that way. And that's how our world, like our community, gets bigger.
So is there anything else that you would like to share about like now that you have this knowledge and you are, moving through your world to with awareness?
Yeah.
How is your life different with awareness of the mechanisms that are happening?
Well, I think I will never not be doing the work of trying to understand my relationship to masking.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think I can put that awareness back in the bottle. It's out now, right? And I think I'm grateful for that. And I think that kind of like you said, choosing to put myself in spaces that honor true self, ABB being a primary one for me, places that signal safety, places where people can bring curiosity and not stigma. Those are the places where unmasking can happen, and just trying to fill my life with that.
It's just having more people that have the ability to communicate what's going on, how they see things. And that doesn't always have to be mouth words. That could be a facial expression. That could be, some people like to write better. Some people, honestly, and what I love about ABB is the low pressure situations that you guys allow a lot of people to exist in the space, how they are able to show up. That means if you're really uncomfortable having your camera on, it's okay to have it off. If you really don't feel like talking or like using mouth words, you're welcome to type in the chat. And that's, I think, what is so different.
Nice to have that mirror where somebody else who actually understands is able to communicate with me when it's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do these 5,000 things this week because you're in the middle of a crash. Because I won't really always say that for myself. I will try and talk myself into doing it. I'm very much a perfectionist and a people pleaser, and being able to have a safe space to have discussions about the fact that I am a human that has multiple disabilities is really helpful, and has kind of impact how I go about my day-to-day life.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, the idea of having a mirror or being a mirror, I mean, I think that's what we do for each other, of being a community of people who have similar challenges and have a limited energy. And I mean, everyone has a finite capacity. It's just that some people can pretend they don't. And masking and energy conservation, like, are really just, they're not compatible.
Yeah.
And I think that for many people, being around people who get it, who are also experimenting with showing up authentically, is like gives people that contrast, right? Of like, oh, these are people I can be myself with, and now I notice all the places that I can't, and oh wow, that actually has an impact on my health. Is a lot of the time maybe we don't have privilege to avoid
Yeah.
those spaces, but to like have a different narrative of it, of like,
Yes.
I'm showing up differently to stay safe in this space, not because there's anything wrong with who I am.
Yeah. It's an empowered stance for sure.
Like, I don't really like to participate in like neurodivergent advocacy spaces. I get like irritable and dysregulated a lot. Because there's like, it's a lot of binary, like, masking is good, masking is bad. It's like masking is involuntary, it is neutral. Like, it is a neutral
Yeah.
state
Yeah.
that comes out when you're not safe. And it will be less when you are safe. Like, I don't know that it's more complicated than that, but that doesn't stop people from making it more complicated than that.
What I love about that, the idea that masking is neutral, it makes me think of, so I've been thinking a lot about burnout in my family and me, and you hear masking contributes to burnout. But if it's neutral, it's not contributing to the burnout. It's the need for the masking. It's the environment that calls on the masking.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I freaking love that. That is like that shift. It's very subtle, but it really makes a difference. It's if your circumstances were better aligned with your access needs, you would not feel compelled to mask. And to recognize that the involuntary automatic autonomic nervous system response also drains your battery
Yes.
because of these conditions, making it so that you didn't have a choice. Thank you again to our incredible panelists, Beck Natal, Janelle Starr, Anya Kalani, and Liz Carney. I just am so grateful, and just the wisdom that you all shared with us, and the experiences that you've created for so many people here tonight. Like, I'm seeing so much resonance in the chat as we watched. Like, I cannot thank you all enough. And thank you to everyone. And thanks, Anya. I second what Anya was saying. Thank you to everyone who came to watch and listen. And thank you for being part of our community. We will be continuing our journey of exploring masking next week with another community panel, this time of clinicians reflecting on how the healthcare system forces them to mask and what this has been like. We hope to see you next week. Bye.